Welcome to the Seven Figure CEO podcast, where we talk all things marketing strategies, business systems, personal development insights, and conduct interviews with successful CEOs and entrepreneurs. Learn the exact strategies on how seven-figure CEOs market and scale their companies with your host, Chris Rodriguez. Welcome to the Seven Figure CEO podcast, and today we have Nicholas Gregoriades, a BJJ Black Belt and Roger Gracie's first ever awarded Black Belt. He's an accomplished competitor, podcast host, and author of Aligned, The Modern Man's Guide to Health, Wealth, and Freedom. Super excited to have someone of Nick's caliber on the podcast today. Nick, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Chris. I appreciate you having me on. It's good to be here.
Yes, absolutely. So, our listeners are a mix of martial artists, martial arts school owners, entrepreneurs who are really aiming to hit that seven-figure mark. And since I mainly know you for your wicked jiu-jitsu skills, I thought we'd talk a little bit about kind of your jiu-jitsu journey and how that led you to now being, a mentor, a podcast host, and an acclaimed author.
Yeah, so I started training martial arts when I was very young, about 7 years old. I took my first Judo class, and I did that for a few years. And then when I was 19, I started doing boxing, which I really enjoyed. Did that for a couple of years, and then I started doing a little bit of submission grappling in my home city of Cape Town, South Africa, and I loved that. I was pretty good at that. And then I moved to London. And during my time in London, I started training at Roger's Academy, the original academy in Northwest London, and just was, again, I was pretty good at it. I was very dedicated and focused, and so I managed to get my black belt from Roger. And then I spent many years teaching. I still teach quite a bit, but I have two focuses now. The one is my association called Subconscious Jiu Jitsu. And the other one is I'm a men's coach. I help men lead lives of authenticity and fulfillment. And the way that came about was, I was just looking at everything I'd done in jiu-jitsu, and, I love jiu-jitsu, but when you do something for like 20 or 30 years, you want to expand your horizons. And I realized that there was a lot of overlap with what I'd done in jiu-jitsu and the way I led men on the mats. And I realized I could lead them in other things because, spiritual growth and personal development, I've been doing that for even longer than I've been doing jiu-jitsu. So there was a natural overlap with that. And I think it's coming up on 3 or 4 years ago, 3 years now, I started my other business, my coaching business, and released my first book a year ago. Second book is coming soon. And it's been a wild ride. It's been a lot more challenging than jiu-jitsu was for me, but no less rewarding.
I definitely can relate with doing something for a very long period of time and also developing certain skill sets that you want to try out in, other ventures. Curious, you're working, predominantly with men and helping to coach them. How do you think jiu-jitsu has played a role in that ability? And, I'm curious, what do you think of the state of the culture of jiu-jitsu, where we're at right now?
What an interesting question. So I think that there's two types of jiu-jitsu culture. There's the one which is predominant in most jiu-jitsu academies around the world, where you go and it's a group of people just wanting to better themselves and experience some camaraderie, experience some physical touch, to be honest, because a lot of people are so distanced from any sort of physical contact or interaction. And they just want to be around, they want to socialize, they want to joke with people and, learn together and just have this kind of bonding experience. And that aspect of the culture, to be honest, Chris, that's the only thing that keeps me in jiu-jitsu at this point, because I don't compete anymore, really. And, in my 40s now, jiu-jitsu is very hard on my body. And the truth is, learning new jiu-jitsu moves and stuff, I enjoy it. I find it's fun and it's interesting, but it doesn't excite me. It doesn't, there's no passion in that for me. Like when you've been doing it for as long as I have, like there's naturally going to be a tapering off of that. But what does excite me and what does keep me on the mats is that culture I just described, which is, sometimes I just go down to the academy just to see my friends, just to hang out, just get a little bit of exercise, just shoot the shit and just be around cool people. And that element of the culture, I love. I'm the biggest proponent of it. I think it's so good for people. I think it's so healthy, and I'm the biggest supporter and champion of that. There's another element of the culture which, is very linked, I think, or very it runs parallel to MMA, which is this like douchebag tough guy kind of mentality where everyone's always talking smack, and it's all about who's the toughest guy, and there's very little respect. There's very little of what I believe to be the true essence of martial arts. It's all about who can, take the most steroids and train the hardest, and then kick the shit out of the other guy the best, and smack talk the best. And I've got very little tolerance or interest in any of that. And in fact, I'd say I've got zero interest in any of that. It just makes me feel gross whenever I see it or read anything about it, or when I see these guys who've made it to the top of that particular ladder. They just don't seem like people I'd want to spend any time with, or they're not on my frequency. So I just avoid that element of the culture. So a long way of answering your question, there are these two very disparate cultures. The one I love, the one I don't like at all. And that's my current perspective on it.
Yeah, I love the way that you explain that. Was recently at a grappling tournament, and I've been doing jiu-jitsu for a couple of decades now as well. And we predominantly focus on kids jiu-jitsu. Just being a woman, and I'm 5'2", it kind of made sense owning a jiu-jitsu school to focus on the kids programs. And we hadn't brought in our competition team since before COVID. And we recently went a few weekends ago, and I have noticed a complete shift in not just the way that coaches and adults are acting that are competing, but even the kids. And after the tournament, I'm going online on Facebook and Instagram, and I'm getting hit with these ads of these 8-year-olds and 9-year-olds that have Instagram profiles with all of their, accolades. And I've definitely noticed that kind of more MMA culture seeping into a lot more of the tournaments. And, the first culture that you explained is the same reason why I love jiu-jitsu. There's just something magical that happens when you roll with somebody that I haven't been able to recreate in any other sport that, I've ever played. Mm-hmm. So I think it's so awesome that you have, this jiu-jitsu life, and then you have this now coaching life. Thank you for sending me a copy of the book Aligned. I was able to read through it. Talk to me a little bit about the process of writing your book, because I'm an author as well, and just kind of interested on, why you decided to become an author. You're now writing a second book, and what was that process like for you?
Yeah, so actually Aligned was my third book. I wrote 2 jiu-jitsu books before that, so I'm now writing my 4th book. And awesome. But it was my first personal development book, or book on a topic unrelated to jiu-jitsu, or I guess not directly related to jiu-jitsu. And Chris, I really believe all the best books, they're kind of inside you, and they want to be written. They kind of just have to be expressed, right? Otherwise it starts to drive you a little bit mad. And it was the same process with Aligned. I've been on a journey for my whole life to maximize my human experience. Now, I know everyone wants to live the best life possible. Everyone wants to enhance their pleasure, decrease their pain, become as successful as possible. But I really I've taken that to heart. From as far back as I can remember, I was always looking for the secrets, whether that be advice from older people, or reading books, or studying different things. Like, I wanted to figure this thing out. I wanted it because And at the root of that is because I value my life so much. I really look at life as a very precious gift. And so I don't want to waste this gift. I don't want to waste this potential that I've been given, because who knows, it might never come around again. You know, we all have different beliefs about what happens after death. I'm not sure what happens, but it may very well be that this is the one time on this ride. And if that's the case, I want to have the best ride possible. So, you know, living your life in that way, you collect a lot of information, and then, you know, information is one thing, but you have to turn it into wisdom by testing it and acting on it and applying it. And that's what I did. You know, I went out into the world, and I tested what I'd been showed against, or what I'd learned against the realities of human experience. And from that, I formulated or distilled all the wisdom into 20 principles, which I outline in the book. It's not everything I learned, but at that point, it was the 20 most important things. And so, yeah, that's how the book came to be. And it's something I really enjoyed writing, and I'm very proud of. And I look at it as like bookend isn't the right term, but it is kind of a bookend to the first phase of my life, the first 40 years of my life, in which I was on this quest. I'm still on the quest. I still want to learn. I still want to get better. But, you know, I think in Islamic cultures say that you're not really considered a man until you turn 40. And for me, like, I wrote that book at around the age of 40, and it was like, okay, this is phase one. This is a distillation. This is something I could give to, you know, the 15-year-old Nick back. If I could go back in time and hand him this book, like, it would make such a difference to him, you know? So that's how it came to be.
Was there a specific moment in time that you could look back to and say, at this point, I knew it was time for me to go a different path, right? The first kind of big chunk of your life was spent in martial arts. Was there a specific moment in time, or was it just the accumulation of, you know, all of these years of being on the mat and being a martial artist?
Yeah, there was a specific moment in time. I wouldn't say it was a very crystallized single like flash, but there was a period in which I was working on my jiu-jitsu business that had been pretty successful up until that point. But I was 7 years into this business, and I just my business partner at the time and we just didn't see eye to eye, and the business had stagnated at a specific level. And try as hard as I couldn't get it to grow beyond that level. And I was doing some deep reflection and realized one of the reasons was the guy I was working with and I just weren't on the same frequency. And then the other reason is I realized that the universe was saying to me, okay, you've got to expand now. You've got to grow. You've got to go beyond this thing that's, you know, you've done this now, you know, because I don't want to say I did it all, but man, I wrote 2 books on jiu-jitsu. I produced videos. I produced membership courses. I created an association. I competed. I toured around the world. I, you know, had products. I had gis that I made. Like, I'd done a hell of a lot in jiu-jitsu. And it was just the next logical progression, you know, but also more than that, it was I could feel my soul was calling to me. I always knew on some level I was going to be someone I was going to give back in the world of self-development, because I've just got a lot to give. And so that was pulling at me. And I knew if I didn't act on it, I would forever be questioning. I would forever be thinking, man, I didn't make the biggest use of my gift. So I didn't step up and grow. In your book, you have this, you say, this world belongs to those who take action. They get the best of everything. The rest get the dregs. Why do you think it is that some people, some business owners, settle for average while others want the entire world? I think what it ultimately comes down to is, I mean, everything comes down to love or fear, right? Your motivations for everything you do are either love or fear. And I think some of those people who want the entire world, they actually want it from a place of fear. They don't feel secure within themselves. So they think if they make a certain amount of money or reach a certain level of success, then they'll be secure. Whereas some of them do it for love. Some of them are like, wow, like I've got to grow. I want to give. I've got this power inside me that I know comes from a higher source, and I want to, project that out into the world. And that means I've got to grow. And I'm not going to be happy with having 1 gym or 3 gyms. I want to have something. I know I can do more. I know I can do better, right? And I think it's the same reason some people don't expand, is because they're afraid. They know that building a bigger business will usually come with more responsibility, or it'll require more dedication or commitment, or more work, I guess, or more energy from them. And they might be afraid of that, or they might be afraid of the consequences of what happens if they do become successful. I know that was a thing for me for a long time that kept me at a particular level, is I didn't want to deal with all the hassle or the potential downsides of more success. And that was ultimately because I was afraid. And I had to really take a long, hard look at that, and then ask why I was afraid, and then move from a place of fear into a place of love.
I love it. Great response. Chapter 19, all about powerful routines. And I am a very routine type A, kind of, super organized, super structured type of person, but not everybody's like that. So, what do you believe that, our listeners, which are predominantly like business owners, entrepreneurs, are usually missing out of their routines?
What are they missing out of the routines? I mean, on a broad level, it's usually consistency. They usually set up a routine and do it for a week or 2, and then get distracted. And the power from routines is cumulative, right? It builds up, it creates a momentum of its own for the longer you do it, right? So I noticed with myself, it just happened to me recently. I was in an excellent routine. Everything, I was firing on all cylinders. Everything was going really well. And then I had a friend come to stay with me. One of my best friends came to spend 10 days with me. And I didn't anticipate just how much that would throw me out of my routine. And I didn't anticipate, well, I knew getting out of my routine was going to cost me. Like I noticed, like everything just starts to deteriorate when I'm not doing my routines. So consistency is usually the thing that's missing. I mean, specifically, what actual routine are they missing? What actual habit are they missing from their routine? It's 2 parts. The first is a dedicated morning routine. So every morning, wake up and get yourself into a state of mind, or get your frequency to a place where you're going to be giving good energy and putting good things out into the world. Most of us wake up and it's just a rush. You go brush your teeth, you maybe sit down, eat a breakfast in a hurry, watch the news with the TV blaring, like filling your mind with garbage. And then you down like a big coffee, and then you go out into the world. And then, that's a very like frantic or frenetic sort of energy to carry with you. And I'm sure you've experienced this, Chris, like the energy you put out into the world is the energy you get back, right? So when you head into the world carrying that or vibrating at that frequency, then that's what you get back. Whereas if you wake up and you don't put on the TV and you do some stretching and some mobility work, get the circulation going with your body to relax all your muscles, and then you do some mindfulness, get present, do some gratitude practice, be thankful for everything good in your life. You maybe look at the day's to-do list and figure out the best way to approach the things you need to get done, and maybe say some positive affirmations or whatever it might be. And you've got this little ritual that centers you and prepares you. Then when you move out into the world, you're a different species of human, right? You're completely a different species of human. You're operating at a totally different frequency. And so the simulation or the world or whatever you believe this thing to be is, it then reflects back at you that calm, grounded, centered energy, right? I just saw this yesterday. Yesterday I missed my morning routine for a specific reason. I shouldn't have, but I could feel I was off. I wasn't centered. And I noticed it throughout the day, like little things happen. Like traffic. I don't get in the flow of traffic when I'm in my car, and like people cut me off. And then, like I got into a little bit of an argument with the woman at the gas station about something. And it's just, I could just feel like things weren't flowing. I wasn't the best version of myself. And so I think the morning routine is something most people are missing. And what most people miss if they do have a morning routine is just quiet time, like mindfulness, like quiet reflection, where you calm everything down.
I love it. I've been a huge fan of having a morning routine for about the last decade. It changed slightly when my wife and I had a baby, right? But I think most people's mornings are very reactive as opposed to being proactive. You have a chapter, in your book talking about meditation. And for me, this has been something that has been very challenging. I made it a goal to do it for 30 days straight, utilizing one of the apps on my phone. I did it for 30 days. I was miserable throughout every single one of those sessions. I am somebody that believes that action alleviates anxiety. Like if I'm feeling nervous about something, like let me just take action, like I'm a doer. What do you say to people like me that have, maybe tried meditation and they're not seeing its benefits?
I would suggest,
you think it's for everybody, I guess is the other question.
Everybody's such an absolute statement, Chris. I would say I think it's for the vast majority of people. There are some people apparently for whom meditation just increases anxiety. I was told that by a medical professional. I don't really believe that, but that's apparently the case. I think when you meditate, you need to know what you're doing. You need to have a roadmap for what it is you're trying to accomplish. And there's a very good book called The Mind Illuminated that has a very specific sequential process with milestones. And it shows you, okay, in the first few weeks, this is what you're trying to get to. Then this is what you're trying to get to, as opposed to just sitting there. Like, it's very unlikely that if you just sit down and close your eyes, you're going to stumble upon the benefits of meditation. You might. I actually did. When I was younger, I just closed my eyes and I said, I'm just going to sit down until I feel fucking better, right? And eventually my mind became quiet and I entered into some meditative states, but I got lucky. I think for most people, they need to know why it is they're doing it and what to look for and specifically how to do it. So I would recommend that book, The Mind Illuminated by Kuladasa is the author.
Awesome. Do you have a favorite chapter in your book? And if so, why is that your favorite chapter?
Yeah, so originally the book was 19 chapters and I couldn't really write much more. I was like, that was it. And then you've read the book, so I'm sure you've read chapter 20, which came after the fact, like just before I was about to publish the book. And it surrounds my divorce, which was the hardest thing I've ever been through. And that's definitely my favorite chapter because that was the one that I felt flowed through me more than any of the others. It was almost as if I was channeling it. And like I said at the beginning of our conversation, a good book, it's something or a book that needs to be written. It has to come out of you. And of all the chapters, that was the one that really it almost felt like I was channeling it. And so that's one of the reasons it was my favorite chapter 20.
Okay. And you said that you're currently in the process of writing the next book. Can we kind of take a peek behind the curtain? What's that going to be all about?
Yeah, the next one, Chris, is called The Heroic Entrepreneur. And it's all about my perspectives on what entrepreneurship really is. And I believe it's an analogy for the hero's journey. A lot of people look at entrepreneurship as it's just business, right? It's trying to buy or sell goods or services to make a profit. And it's my perspective that it's a lot more than that. And that, if you're doing it properly, it really is something that has a very soulful nature to it. And also if you're doing it properly, there's a lot of challenges and it requires you to face your fears and just like any hero, find courage, right? And it's it's my philosophy on entrepreneurship and my approach to entrepreneurship and how it is, if done properly, a heroic endeavor.
I love it. I can't wait till, do you have an estimated release date?
I'm hoping Q1 next year, and I will send you a copy for sure.
Awesome. Very cool. Can you talk to me a little bit about this, mentoring and coaching program that has come out of, all of this work that you've been doing?
Sure. Well, at the moment, I work with people in two ways. The first is through my Heroic Entrepreneur Facebook group, which it's free. You're welcome to join. And I put content in there, which I know it's very, very valuable content and people get a lot out of it. And then I work with men specifically on a one-to-one basis, either in a 3-month capacity or in a 1-year capacity. And that's just, not just, it's quite a comprehensive undertaking because, when I was first starting my coaching, everyone was saying, oh, you got to niche down, you got to create a niche, you got to create a specialty. And I tried to do that and I just couldn't, because my work is all encompassing. When I work with someone, we're working on his spiritual path, we're working on his physical path. So I create workouts for them, or I help them get in shape. On the spiritual path, I get them to meditate, right? To quiet their minds, and I get them to find out what they're passionate about. It's to do with relationships as well. I challenge them on, their relationships with women, or their romantic relationships, if it's with men, whatever it might be. It's an all-encompassing thing, because I'm sure Chris, it's very hard to lead a fully actualized life when one element of your life is dragging you down. You can be doing great in business and you can be in great health, but if your primary relationship, or the relationships in your life are shit, then it generally ends up dragging down those other two, right? Or you can have a great relationship and, have fantastic health, but your business is crappy and you're not making enough to survive. And then you're not going to be happy or fulfilled, right? Or you could have all three of those things great, but you feel hollow because you're not really giving your gifts back to the world. And so, when I work with men, that's the commitment I make to them, is we're gonna focus on not one thing, but everything to make you the best possible version of yourself.
I know, being an entrepreneur and starting a jiu-jitsu school as my first business, it was like my baby, and I sacrificed so many things, including my health. And I think this is something that a lot of entrepreneurs find themselves, doing is, oh, there's never enough time in the day. I'll get the workout in later. And I definitely see this as just as a consistent thing in the entrepreneurial world, where business owners, 99.9% of their time is spent on the business, and they're completely forgetting everything else that you said, like the relationships, the friendships, the community, the contribution, to give back. One of my favorite quotes is that there's no worldly success that can compensate for failure in the home. And that has been a guiding light for me. Doesn't matter how much money I have if I'm not a present parent, for my son.
There's no worldly success that can compensate for failure in the home. I love that. I'm gonna take that. Thank you so much, Chris.
Yeah.
And
I heard it first from Russell Brunson. So that's nice. Where I heard it. So
that's cool. I'm realizing that old paradigm of hustle and grind until you've amassed your fortune and you do it at all costs. That paradigm is not only outdated, it always comes with a price that is, in my opinion, exceeds the rewards, right? It either costs you your health, right? Which is, once your health is gone, you can't buy it back, right? If Steve Jobs if we could speak to him when he was alive during those final years, when he was dying of pancreatic cancer, I'm sure if the option was available, he would have given every penny he had to buy his health back, but he couldn't. It's not an option, right? And then the second thing it usually costs you, if you do that, if you buy into that, is your soul, right? Because you're either doing something you hate, or very often doing something you hate, or you are doing things that are questionable morally. You're stepping over people or living in that dog eat dog, kill or be killed paradigm. And I see it over and over again. I see these business guys who they've made it to the top, right? But they are empty shells, hollow shells of human beings. And that's, even if that was the only way, I would not choose it. I would not choose it, right?
What are your thoughts on like work-life balance? Do you believe in work-life balance? Do you believe in work-life integration? What are your thoughts on that?
I believe in integration. Like for me, my whole philosophy is that I'm going to be the best entrepreneur I can be when I'm the happiest, healthiest, most integrated, passionate human being that I can be. And what that means is not working 15 hours a day until my eyes get fucking blurry and I get a stomach ulcer and I just feel like crap and I neglect all my relationships. And that to me is not the way forward. It's not, it just doesn't make sense to me, but I know that when I do my morning routine and when I'm grateful and when I'm calm and rested and present, that I do better work anyway. My service is better, right? And so when my service is better, I make more money. There's people out there who do exceptionally well financially and they aren't stressed. They aren't stressed and they're doing things they love and they're giving back and they feel good about what they're creating. And I'm one of those people and I help people become those people. And that's, I'm living proof and it can be done. Right. So I'm going to keep doing it.
Yeah. In the closing of your book, you quoted Roger Gracie and said, you can have anything you want in life as long as you're prepared to give what's required to get to it. So what does that look like for you? What is the, I hate to use the term next level, but what does the next level look for Nick? What does that look like?
So to answer, that's two questions. I'll answer the first one, which is like, what am I prepared to give or what is required? And for me, it's commitment, authenticity, presence, discipline. There's several of these things that just, it's not going to happen without them, right? Because the caveat is you can feel as great as you want to feel and meditate for 12 hours a day, but unless you're taking the action required, nothing's going to come of it, right? So there's that. And then the next level for me is, it's just to scale up. It's to do everything I'm doing on a larger scale. It's just to reach more people. That's why I've started the Heroic Entrepreneur Group, and I'll be doing online workshops, my first workshops in a couple of weeks, which I'm really excited about. Awesome. Yeah, it's putting myself out there more and just giving more back by scaling up. That's what the next level looks like. Everything I'm doing, I think I'm doing it very well. Obviously, no one's doing everything as well as it can be done because no one's perfect. But now I just need to scale it up.
I love it. And if our listeners want to follow you, would the Heroic Facebook group be the best way to connect with you and your content?
Yeah, either go to coachnickg.com, and that's Nick with just a C, no K, or the Heroic Entrepreneur on Facebook. You just type in Heroic Entrepreneur on Facebook and you'll find it.
Awesome. Well, we'll definitely link to that in the show notes. Nick, thank you so much for joining me today. We got to talk about two of my favorite things, which is, jiu-jitsu and entrepreneurship, but really like human optimization and how we can be the best person that we can be. Anything else you'd like to share before we wrap up?
No, thank you for the opportunity to come on your show, Chris. I appreciate you.
Thanks, Nick.